Hello all, I'm Andrew Yang. I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. And it was certainly nothing I ever thought I would do. I was brought up not to think, frankly, that running for president was something realistic. My parents immigrated to this country. They met as graduate students at UC Berkeley. My father got his PhD in physics. My mom got her master's in math. I grew up in upstate New York. My parents told me to do well in school, which I tried to do. And I became an entrepreneur after a lot of stumbles, and it sounds like Kelsey might have had some experience with this as well. How many of you all have started a business or organization, or club, or book club, or mailing list? So if you've done anything like that at any point, you know it's really, really hard. And then if someone asks you how it's going, what do you have to say? Great. Going great. It's always going great. So my first business went great until it failed. It had a mini rise and maximum fall. So I knew firsthand how hard it was to start a business, but I stuck with it for another 10 years, eventually became the head of an education company that grew to become #1 in the United States and was bought by a bigger company in 2009. Now 2009 was the wake of the financial crisis. How was that here in Muscatine, in this area of Iowa? It was rough? It was rough in much of the country, and I thought I had some insight as to why the mess, the breakdown of the economy had occurred. It was because so many of our whiz kids were heading to Wall Street to become Excel jocks and not doing anything productive. The same thing was happening on the other side of the country. They're heading to Silicon Valley to become computer geniuses, and those things were not necessarily generative for most of the country. So I quit my job. I started a nonprofit called Venture for America, and the goal was to train hundreds of entrepreneurs to start businesses in places like St. Louis, Detroit, Birmingham, New Orleans, places away from the coasts around the country. I spent 7 years doing that work, helped create several thousand jobs. It was so successful that I was invited to the White House with my wife to meet President Obama. So my in-laws liked me for about a week. They were like, oh, you did good. But while I was being clapped on the back for helping create these jobs, I had this uneasy feeling that the economy was changing in much more dramatic and profound ways. And that even as I was being celebrated for creating several thousand jobs, we were eliminating many, many more jobs. And then in 2016, Donald Trump became our president. If you're in this room, some of you had a very negative reaction to that. Some of you probably supported Donald Trump. I'm sure all of you have neighbors who supported Donald Trump. And that's a certainty because Donald Trump won Iowa by 9 points. He didn't just win Iowa by 9 points, he won Wisconsin. He won most of the Midwest. And if you turn on cable news, why would you think that Donald Trump is our president today? You're smiling. Russia. That's right. Russia, racism, Facebook, the FBI, Hillary Clinton, some cocktail of those reasons. But I'm a numbers guy, and the numbers tell a different story. The numbers say the reason why Donald Trump is our president today is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. All of these states were the states Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And now what happened to those jobs is happening to retail jobs, call center jobs, fast food jobs, and eventually truck driving jobs throughout our economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Muscatine, or in this area? And why are those stores closing?
Amazon.
Amazon's sucking up $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. That is your math, Iowa. 20 billion out, zero back. $1 trillion tech company somehow paid less in taxes than everyone in this room. 30% of your stores and malls are closing as we speak. And the most common job in most of the country is working as a retail clerk. The average retail worker is a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $11 an hour. What is her next move after her store closes? Welfare. How many of you have seen a self-serve kiosk when you go into a McDonald's or other fast food chain? Yeah, you've seen them because McDonald's has said they're going to have a self-serve kiosk in every location in the U.S. by 2021. Meanwhile, food service and food preparation is the third most common job category in the United States. Where are those jobs going to go after McDonald's succeeds in automating first the front of the house, and now they're working on the back of the house? How many of you know someone who drives a truck for a living? Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states, including this one. I was just at Iowa 80 in Davenport. Biggest truck stop in the country. And it proudly says that 5,000 people stop there every day. On the other side of the country, my friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They tell me that they are 98% of the way there. How many of you knew that there are robot trucks on the highways right now in Arizona? What is this going to mean for the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living, or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops like Iowa 80, and motels and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal? Donald Trump is not the cause of our problems. He's a symptom. He's the manifestation. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When is the last time you heard a politician say the words fourth industrial revolution?
Right now.
Just now. Just now, and I'm barely a politician. So this is what got me into this race, is that Donald Trump wins in 2016. I look up and I say, wow, for some reason we're confused about what's happening to us. And my first move was not to run for president, because I'm not a loon. I'm like, oh, well, like some of the other people have been like gearing up for this for years. It's like, you know, I mean, I was just like, okay, my first move is not to run for president. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., to our leaders, present the case, and say, what are we going to do about the fact that America's confused? It is not immigrants that are causing these economic dislocations. When you go to a warehouse or a fulfillment center or a factory in Michigan or Iowa, you do not find wall-to-wall immigrants. You find wall-to-wall machines, wall-to-wall robots. You've seen it on your farms. You've seen it happen to your factories. Now it's going to happen to your Main Street retailers and stores, your fast food restaurants, and eventually your truck stops and highways. This is the true cause of the dislocations around the country. So I went to Washington, D.C., and I said, what are we going to do about it? And what do you think they said to me when I asked them, what are we going to do about it?
Nothing.
More research.
The three most common answers I got were, number one, we cannot talk about that. Number two, we should study that further. And number three, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. And that last one sounds responsible. And then I said, look, I checked out the data, the studies on how effective government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers in the Midwest who lost their jobs, those 4 million workers. Do you all want to guess how effective government-funded retraining programs were on a percentage basis?
0 to 15.
0 to 15%. That's right. They're essentially entirely ineffective. And when I said that to the people in Washington, D.C., you know what they said to me next? I guess we'll get better at it. That's what passes for policy out of D.C. They are disconnected, and their incentives are not tied to actually solving these problems. And there's one person in D.C. who set me on a path that led me to you all. He said, Andrew, no one here will do anything about anything you're talking about. Because this town, Washington, D.C., is not a town of leaders. This is a town of followers. And the only way we will do anything is if you create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I heard that, and I said, challenge accepted. I will be back. And that's what got me to run for president. That's why I'm here with you all today. How many people are in this coffee shop, in this room with us right now? Let's call it, whatever the fire code is. So that might So let's say there are 60 people here in this room. 70 maybe, including the overflow. Do you know how many Californian voters, for example, each Iowan voter is worth? 1,000. So you see 60 Iowans, that's enough to start a revolution. That's like 2 football stadiums full of Californians. That's why I'm here. This is where the wave gets formed and gets started, and then we bring this wave down on their heads starting next February. So this is the mission. The question is, what is the wave? What is the vision? If you were here today, you heard something at some point like this. There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Raise your hand if you heard that at some point. Right? You remember that. And the first time you heard that, you thought it was a joke, you thought it was a gimmick, you thought it would never happen. But if you dig into our country's history, this dividend is a deeply American idea. Thomas Paine was for it at our founding, called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King fought for it in the 60s, called it the guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. And it is what he was fighting for when he was assassinated in 1968. 1,000 economists endorsed it. in the 60s. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon. It was called the Family Assistance Plan. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year. I don't believe it's true. $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? Alaska. And how do they pay for it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
Technology, AI, robots, data, big data. A study just came out that said that our data is worth more than oil. Do you all remember getting your data check in the mail? No. That is the 21st century economy. They're getting the data check from our data, and we're seeing none of it. So the vision is of an economy that works for us. That's trickle up instead of trickle down. And the great thing about it is after I'm president, thank you, Iowa, after I'm president in 2021 and you're getting this $1,000 a month, where would you spend it in real life?
Locally.
Yeah, how much of it would stay right here in Iowa?
Well, quite a bit in this coffee shop, probably.
Yeah, the coffee shop would get busier, your business might get busier, it would go to daycare and car repairs you've been putting off, and Little League signups and local organizations. A little bit of it would float up to the cloud. You'd spend a little bit more with Amazon and maybe you'd upgrade your Netflix subscription or something.